Welcome everyone to the September 17th, 2025 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. Please stand, what are we doing first? Call the order.
Jocelyn Apostello, here. Eric Arnold.
Here.
Jennifer Harrington Wilson.
She is excused.
Dan Jasnow.
Here.
Peter Lesser.
Here.
Ken Schott.
He should be here soon.
Sarah Torman. Here.
Now the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving on to the agenda and agenda changes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion?
Second.
Do we have any changes to the agenda today? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving into Superintendent's report with Dr. Starr.
You have the magic touch.
I swear.
Just use the keyboard.
Thank you.
Just want to, not focus on the show. Okay.
You're a liar on me. I just
It's a conspiracy against
It
the
is.
justice.
It is. That's what it is.
Well, that superintendent's report is off to a good start. Well, good evening, everybody, Board of Education, members in the community. Tonight I'm really excited. This is my favorite time of year where the school year is really off and running and the excitement of school is happening. And we have a lot of exciting things to share to the community, both with what happened today and what are going to happen in the future. So I'm really excited about it. I can't start a board meeting without talking about our wonderful school lunch program. I did a day 2 update to the board last time. I'm happy to report that the number of students participating in school lunch has not gone down. We are averaging anywhere between 175 to over 185 students a day participating in the lunch program. That's kind of like a mid-80s to like almost 90% of our student population participating, in the lunch program. I will say, it sounds very easy to serve 178 lunches a day. It's not that easy, and we are working with Whitson's. They've been a great partner on solidifying, number one, staffing. We were not fully staffed in the first couple days of school. We're getting up to being fully staffed by Whitson's employees. We're also, the production of the food, we're finding we can prepare more and more here on site because of the condition of our kitchen and having more staffing here earlier. So we're actually getting better at producing the food in a more timely manner. As well as having it prepared well ahead of time. So as those things get better, we can kind of work out the kinks. And that is why right now we're not doing a la carte. Why you have not heard from me, parents, about my school bucks or a la carte. Sorry, staff. I know you're dying for the chicken Caesar salad. We will get it to you soon, I promise. But we want to iron out all of the, absolutely free lunches for everybody first, get that down to a science, and then we'll start to open up the a la carte options and staff lunches will be first. So again, one of the things that I will say is you did see something come out from the district about a free and reduced lunch survey. We are required to send this out, that survey, and the reason is this is our baseline year. We are under Provision 2 of the federal school lunch program under Putnam Valley's FSA. We are required to take a baseline of the need in our district. And so that means even if you're not eligible, even if you know for sure you're not eligible, we ask that you fill those out and send those back mail them to Joe Chimick, or drop them off in the office in an envelope. We have to collect them and send them to Putnam Valley. We'll send them to the powers that be in the child food nutrition services, so that they can create a baseline, and this will allow us to continue to be eligible for years to come. So again, it's not going to impact whether you return it or don't return it, but it does help the district of getting a good baseline. So that is why we put out that free and reduced lunch survey. But again, it's free to everybody. And if you have questions, please contact Joe. He'll walk you kind of through it and how to fill it out. And last I'll say is compliments to the Chef Steve. We continue to ask our students, like, well, how's the lunch? Yesterday, they had chicken tenders, not nuggets, tenders this time. And some got from French fries, wrinkle fries, and some got some, I guess, potato puffs they call them. Tater tots is really what it is, but they call them. And the kids are still really raving about the food. So compliments to the chef, everything is going well. So that is my lunch update. And probably my next update will be if we have a la carte and that information. Otherwise, all systems go. Another exciting thing that we are launching, and we'll be talking more about this to the board and to the community, is we talked a lot in this last budget process about innovative instructional design, innovative curriculum. We are actually launching a fellowship called the Empowered Classroom. It is a fellowship, and we are 8 of our brave but very excited teachers are joining Mike McDonald and myself in engaging in intensive 10 hours of professional learning on what we call our 7 pillars for transformational teaching and learning. And these are all research-based, innovative best practices. We're with anchor text, and really we're going to dive into what is the best way students learn, and what is the most innovative, exciting, engaging ways that we can teach. And so we're really looking forward. We're going to talk more about it. That's called the teaser, everybody. We're going to talk a lot more about it. We're really excited about it. Mike and I have our kickoff meetings this week with our cohort, and I just want to thank those 8 teachers. I won't call you out now, but I want to thank them for engaging in this. It's a really high participation rate. We only had room for about 10, and we got 8 people to work on this, and we're excited to talk more about it over the year to come. And last is we, as a school district, we are mapping out all our curriculum, but we're also wanting to map out our environmental and education and sustainability. And we want to come up with a 5-year environmental education and sustainability planning document that we will share with the board. We're going to want students involved and staff involved. We're going to ask some teachers some staff and teachers to be involved, maybe a few parents. And we really want to say, where do we want to go in the next 5 years in our environmental education curriculum? What's our vision? Where do we want to go? So we'll be working with a committee to look at that and come up with a plan. And our own Krista Bucala and Mike McDonald are going to be chairing that committee. So we've got a lot of exciting things that are happening in professional learning and curriculum. So we're really excited to let the community know, let the board know. We're well on our way to that innovative, top-tier type of classrooms. Speaking of committees, if you saw Parent Square, we are launching our outdoor classroom design committee. Peter has so graciously offered to chair this committee. We met with our architect for a preliminary meeting, Joe, myself, and Peter, to talk about how does this get organized and what we're looking for. And we already have some volunteers, so I'm really excited in the community. We're going to have up to 3 board members on this, looking at our outdoor classroom design. The architects will walk us through it. We have up to 6 staff members. We want up to 3 students. We'll probably have students more in the older age, just because they need to kind of understand the process, be available. And then 3 community members. And so for those community members that did put a letter of interest to Dusty, thank you. Already read them. We're really excited about your excitement. And we still have, I think, till October 3rd for people to still express interest. Please note, we'd love to take everybody, but as you see, we did limit the amount of people that can sit on the committee. So we have 3 dates, they're already out there, the October 14th, November 19th, December 9th at 4:30 to 5:30. And Joe and I will have our hiking boots on the 22nd, where we, if people want to come to the site that we're thinking on September 22nd at 4:30 p.m., we'll meet at the school. But you have to let Dusty know if you want to go on that road trip, and we'll go up to the forest and talk about the site with our architects. So for those that are interested in being on the committee, or even just want to see the site, we want you to kind of join us for that. So really exciting stuff going on here in Garrison. I do want to talk about modified sports. They're up and rolling. I want to, number one, thank Haldane and their athletic director and Dr. Duffy for their collaboration and support. This time last year, I was talking to this community and this board about not being able to run a boys soccer program. Carl Albano, myself, Patrick Beckley, and Tom Cunningham, their athletic director, worked really hard last year to make sure that that would not happen again. And so this year, as you can see, boys soccer is merged, and they had a lot of Haldane students. They didn't really need Garrison students to round out their roster. Nevertheless, 3 Garrison students who wanted to play are able to play, and we just sent over, and you'll see later, a recommendation for Pat Beckley to be another coach over there so that we can have 2 coaches for 30. And that's kind of the collaboration and cooperation we have with Haldane. Their first game is at Pauling on the 25th. We have our girls soccer merged. As you can see, it's a pretty even split between Garrison and Haldane students. They also have their first game versus Pauling at home on the 30th. We have 3 Garrison students participating in their merged football program. I will say this is one of the highest in terms of total football participation that they've had in a while, so that's good to see. And they have their first game at Pauling on the 29th. And lastly, we have a lot of great cross-country racers. We have 9 Garrison students, 7 Haldane, and their first meet is at Lakeland and Cabo Beach Middle School, and that's on the 26th. So our fields are ready to go, our coaches are ready to go, our students are ready to go, and I just want to thank Pat for all his work of getting this fall modified season up and running. Couple happenings in the district, just so everybody's aware. Open house is tomorrow. That's for pre-K through grade 3. Schools are closed on the 23rd and 24th for Rosh Hashanah. On the 25th, we have our open house for grades 4 through 8. Please, if you can join us on the 26th at 6:30 p.m. GSAF has sent out information on their outdoor movie night. That'll be right here on the lawn. We believe it's going to be right by our pollinator garden. And the PTA has their fall festival on the 28th. And just a reminder, because we will not be meeting before the 2nd of October, schools are closed for that. And that concludes my superintendent's report. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Great. Thank you, Greg. A lot of very exciting things happening. Does anyone have any questions on the superintendent's report? All right. Thank you very much. We will move on to board president's remarks. Going to touch on a couple of the similar themes. First, just want to thank the whole board for participating in the board retreat last Monday, excuse me. I thought we had a great session, and for community members and staff, one thing we talked a lot about and spent a lot of time on was thinking about both board goals, which is something that we're going to talk about tonight, and really is about what the year ahead is going to be in terms of priorities. We also spent a lot of time talking about a board vision, which is really intended to be sort of a North Star for the district, help us think about what our longer term priorities are compared to the board goals, which are more sort of annually focused. And I really just want to touch on some of the amazing things that are happening that Greg just spoke about in this district and in the building. that, while we're still early in the board vision discussion, I think really align with some of the key themes that we're talking about. Certainly the curriculum mapping, the focus on environmental and sustainability, long-term planning and curriculum development, the Empowered Classroom Fellowship, which is something I think the full board is very excited about, as well as the outdoor classroom project, and thinking about how we can better utilize this incredible resource that we have as a district and as a school over the long term. And I think the vision sort of exercise is really about how do we align all of these things with a long-term plan for the district. It's something that I know Greg is going to be talking about with the staff. It's something we definitely want to get feedback on from the rest of the teachers and staff here in the building. And it's something that we as a board are continuing to think about. But I think I just want to flag for the community that this is really part of a process that we are trying to begin in order to align all of these things, think about what our long-term priorities are, and how they align with our sort of core values as a district. But really excited about the work that has begun, particularly on the Empowered Classroom Fellowship. Very grateful for the teachers that have volunteered for that. I know it's not easy to be sort of the first cohort, but it's something that I think the board is very excited about and really aligns with a lot of what we think is really important here. So also just quickly, Highland Falls has invited the board for a joint meeting on October 9th. Dusty does need final confirmation on who will be able to attend. I'm planning to attend. I know Greg is planning to attend, but you don't have to give an answer now, but if you can check your calendars, let us know if you will be able to do that, or you want to attend, please let us know. And then also just wanted to quickly flag the PTA GSEP events that are coming up. The movie night that Greg mentioned is the first annual GSEP movie night, so it's something that's going to be supporting the 8th grade class this year, potentially replacing some of the funds that have been lost from Pizza Fridays. So another great event for people to get out to, and then of course Fall Fest, which is always a great event. Any questions on any of that or comments? All right, moving on. So we are moving on to board communications, which is the first item is discussion of the NYSSBA resolutions, always a favorite topic. I want to thank Eric for agreeing to be our designate as the NYSSBA liaison and voting delegate for the meeting, the virtual meeting, which is coming up in mid-October. And what we usually do for these is focus on the resolutions where we might have disagreement as a board from what either NYSSBA or this year Westchester Putnam School Boards Association has recommended in terms of how we might vote as a board. Typically, I think we tend to follow the NYSSBA recommendations for these, but if there are any that anybody thinks we might want to go a different direction, we can discuss that and figure out if we have consensus one way or the other. So with that, we can just sort of open it up if people have any that they have highlighted and that we want to start the discussion on.
Well, just one I had a question about was the, I think it was school district put forth to have fewer drills.
Yep.
And I was just curious if the number of drills that we currently do is, in any way sort of negatively impacting instructional time or whatever.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to have fewer.
And just quickly, this is
That's the
proposed resolution 8, which is that NYSSBA shall advocate for the number of lockdown drills to be reduced from 4 to 2 each year.
Yeah.
My understanding is that that we are required to do 4 per year, and so the resolution would reduce the required number down to 2.
Yeah, so it's more of a question for the administration or whatever, would it be nice to have fewer, or are we happy where we are?
I will, from my personal standpoint, I would say I wouldn't oppose to have 2, but I don't think 4 is so significant in terms of what we're doing. The number of fire drills we have to do, that's a different discussion, not on this resolution, but, that is, we have to do, off the top of my head, 10 of them, by a certain time of year. So that to me is a little bit more disruptive than 4 a year of an important lockdown drill. Not that fire drills are not important, they really are. But the kids, by the 4th, 5th time we do it, they got the drill, but they're configured.
We can usually complete the drill in about 10 minutes anyway.
The
By
fire-
the lockdown drill,
Oh, yeah.
it usually takes about 10 minutes for us to clean the whole school with number of policemen that are sent with our staff. It really doesn't take very long for the school this size, so.
I mean, I could see in a bigger school taking a lot longer, so I wouldn't oppose it as long as it is, I think it's important that it's required.
Yeah, that was one I flagged as well, just, it's one that NYSSBA recommends adopting. Westchester, Putnam had no recommendation on it. I just thought, my 2 cents on that was that it would be better to have district discretion on it, and if we have fewer than are required, then maybe it just leaves more discretion for the district, but I don't necessarily feel strongly about it either. Anyone else?
Yeah, the two that I'm looking at are 11 and 22. Yeah, I'm opposed to anything that has the state coming in and saying what curriculum should be. I think that should be left to local districts, teachers, and administrators. So, I think, yes, there should be decisions made on how we incorporate AI, but I don't think it should come from the state. Similarly with adding financial literacy, which is one of the reasons West Putnam uses it as well. So I would be in favor of voting no on those.
Financial literacy is,
It's 22 and 11 is the AI.
yeah.
Yeah, on the AI, I have a little bit more of a nuanced view on that. I agree that I don't think it's the place personally of the state to come in, but I do think that there is some wiggle room in terms of how you do it. And I know we're sort of touched on it in policy committee, we're not really there yet, but as an example, and this is maybe something we can set aside for another discussion another time, but there are learning to prompt is really important. That is it's a huge benefit, and it doesn't necessarily replace learning. There's a little bit more to it, and part of that is if you learn over time that if you're not prompting well, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's an important skill in itself to learn. The other thing is it's not terribly difficult, but again, it's something we have to discuss probably separately, is that you can create sort of a closed loop system, right? And so like I use when I work, for example. So in my job, I'm not supposed to go onto ChatGPT's site. We have an internal system, and then I can choose which AI platform is going to power the work that I'm doing. But the work that I'm doing is not training the model. It's staying within our own domain. So there are ways for us to, and it's not a terribly high bar. There are ways to create sort of your own closed loop system on a local level, informed by whichever tools you choose. So I agree with your point. I think we also just need to be more open-minded as well about what the future looks like for this, because in the same way that 10 years ago was, are we going to teach kids to code, right? This is learning to prompt is absolutely critical for whatever direction your life is going to go. So.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I would like to see it come from our internal policy committee within our district so that we have a little more local control of what it is versus the state telling us.
Yeah, I think Jen is also, she's mentioned that a couple times in meetings and doing it through the planning committee, so I think it's definitely something that we will continue to explore from the district side. So do we have consensus then that we think this should not come from the state? So we would oppose this one.
And 22.
And 22, yeah. So 22 is the financial literacy.
And then, I'm sorry, just to go back to 8,
Yeah.
you're going to support that, or you're not going to do that thing? What did you say?
So, yeah, I mean, I think, certainly, even if it just gives us more discretion, I would have no objection to reducing the number of required lockdown drills. Unless, so I would be inclined to support that
I guess I
unless
would-
people feel differently.
I guess I would kind of wanna support that effort just because maybe it builds momentum towards maybe having fewer fire drills, you know, like, and just, there's just so many things that schools have to do. It'd be nice to reduce some of them so they can spend more time teaching and learning.
Yeah, does everyone feel differently on that one?
I mean, it's not a big deal, I know it's enough, but.
Yeah.
I don't have a huge opinion, I do think that the list of resolutions is quite long,
Yeah.
and I always every year wonder how effective they can be on all of these priorities, but.
Yeah.
It's more of a show of support maybe for the future,
Yeah.
you know, if.
But I agree, I mean, I'm in opposition to limiting them.
I have a question on 13, 14, 17, 18, and 23. They're all the ones that Westchester opposes, even though NYSSBA supports.
Right.
So, like, do we really have to read each one, or do we feel like we wanna align with Westchester Putnam votes, or do we wanna align with what NYSSBA? Cause these are the only discordant ones, really.
No, the one that I had 13 I thought was interesting, I don't really have a strong opinion, other than.
Did you read their comment? On why they opposed it?
Yeah.
I did, I read them all,
It's a
yeah.
little snarky.
Yeah,
but
exactly, they should not be spending like, I feel like this
It's
is
about
part of,
reinstating home health care.
like, why is that a priority, ready, you know?
No,
There's
but
so
I
many
mean-
other, I agree
So
with
you're
your
saying
comments.
opposed,
Yeah, I
because
was
it's
opposed.
not really a worthwhile
Yeah.
use of time, okay.
That was, I saw that one, I was like, really, that's what you guys chose?
Yeah. Are any of those other opposes by Westchester ones that we all would like to support?
So 14 was one that I had flagged,
Mhm.
the amount of daily recess time. So this would allow, well, it would advocate for amendments to Department of Ed regs to allow a set amount of daily recess time, up to 30 minutes per day, to count toward required instructional hours for elementary students. So I wanted to ask Greg what he thought about this one, but, you know, I had similar sort of concerns as what you had raised about, you know, is this reducing our flexibility? Is this saying, that, you know, if we make it part of, required instructional hours, we've got a rain day, or we've got something that interrupts our recess, is that gonna be tying our hands in a way, or reducing the flexibility we have to adjust our schedule? I have no objection to it in principle necessarily, but I was curious how this would affect us from a sort of implementation standpoint.
For us personally, it doesn't affect us, we're well within the 900 and 999 hours of required time. So like we don't include recess as an instructional time, but we have plenty in our day. If it was required to be part of the instructional time, I think the issue, and I think West Putt said the same thing, the issue is more of calendar days and the 180 calendar days and the flexibility with those calendar days, and I think there's a survey that's out there. You know, I don't know, maybe for some schools where they're tight on their 900 or 990, or 900 at the elementary school, that it would be beneficial to them, but it, like, from an operational standpoint for Garrison, it really, whether it would be included in as part of the instructional day or not, doesn't impact the minimum requirement of the number of hours. That's kind of like a pragmatic answer.
Yeah. It does seem, so the comment from Westchester Putt is that New York State is already doing a statewide survey on recess. Calendar days are currently more of an issue. So, I mean, if we wanted to lean into encouraging NYSSBA to focus its resources on a smaller number of advocacy items, we could oppose and follow the Westchester Putt recommendation.
I think that's where.
Okay. So oppose 14. And then are we taking the same?
Well, 15 and 16, they didn't have an opinion, but I do agree that, like, while yes, I'd like to see more reimbursement, for out-of-district special ed placements, redoing the foundation formula, I think is more of something to focus on in terms of, they're gonna advocate for something, let's focus our energies.
Yeah.
So I would oppose this one as well.
So we have 13, we're going with West Putt. 14, we're going with West Putt. Would we benefit from the substantial increases in state reimbursement? I mean, that was the one thing that we have a small, we've got a vulnerable budget. we wanna,
I mean, what I'd like to see them do, and I think maybe at some point I should really look at bringing forth resolutions on behalf of us for us to discuss, is advocating to create a reserve for special education would be so much more beneficial, because we still have to budget for it every year anyway, and you can have people move in, and we just talked about this in audit, and how these numbers can shift. If we were allowed to create a reserve dedicated to special education, that would be much more beneficial to
I'm
us.
scheduling an email for myself to remind you.
Cause that's always, like,
So read that next year.
Because it would allow us to budget for less contingent expense and then have a budget that matches a little bit closer to actual.
I will say, the amount of reimbursement we get, depending on the type of high excess, public excess cost aid, is de minimis compared to the amount of money we spend. So, whether you send a kid to an out-of-district, another, private approved program, or another public school with a high cost, of like a high NRT rate, and aids, and all of that. So, in essence, yes, special education was supposed to be fully funded by the federal government, and it's not. And New York State has a lot of regulations that are above and beyond federal IDEIA requirements. So, like, in essence, I think West Putt's taken a no decision. I agree, it should all be part of foundation formula, like one place, and it should be readjusted to account for the high cost. But in essence, what they're asking for is, trying to get towards fully funding special education placements is a good cause. I just wonder if that's the right place to put it.
we could oppose on grounds that we think, again, we should focus our energy on things that we think would be most effective at doing it, and then that, we think there are better ways to do this, it sounds like.
To get them focused
Do
on
it
the
through
foundation
foundation
aid.
aid, right, which is what, West Putt says as well. So oppose 15? I have to say 16 I think is a great idea. NYSSBA seek and promote legislation to reform current legal notice publication requirements. I think those are just like, they're so antiquated. I mean, again, we could oppose just because it's a waste of their time, but
It's a waste of our time to try to deal with.
yeah, it's a waste of our money too.
So 16 is an opposed?
I think 16 is a
In favor?
support.
Support?
Yeah.
Support.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hold harmless, 17, this is the other one where West Putt, is going a different way from NYSSBA. So this is 17. West Putt says, we believe NYSSBA should be pushing to keep safe harmless rather than offering alternatives.
I agree, they should be pushing to keep safe harmless, that benefits us.
That's the only thing that we get,
Yeah, we need safe harbor.
So oppose on those grounds. Follow West Putt again.
I mean,
I think following West Putt makes sense. Check rural districts so 18 is NYSSBA advocates for a funding threshold to protect rural districts with low enrollment and large geographical footprints in the foundation aid formula.
I just don't understand what that means, like, check this out. Like, what are they trying to do with that? I agree, again, with them, they're saying protect safe harmless, that does protect us, but I don't know what they're advocating for in that.
Yeah. So West Putt is again opposing because they think NYSSBA should be focusing on protecting safe harbors. Yeah. So follow that again. Okay. So those are the ones where there's disagreement.
23 yet?
Yes, so 22 we were gonna oppose,
Yeah.
that's financial literacy. And then, this was another one I wanted to get Greg's thoughts on. The 23 is that NYSSBA would support legislation on the state level that allows school districts to choose to authorize school medical directors and their clinical designees to evaluate, diagnose, temporarily treat, and prescribe medications for students on campus in accordance with New York state law. I think the justification in the NYSSBA packet for this is pretty compelling, from sort of a policy standpoint, but again, whether or not this is a good idea for the district, I think is something that I was curious what you thought about, and if this goes beyond what our capabilities are or should be.
Yeah, I mean, you start crossing the line, Dan, in terms of our educational responsibility and then medical responsibilities. When you start authorizing school medical directors to prescribe medication, like, I'm not so sure that's where a district should be in terms of making medical decisions for families. We certainly use our medical directors to help families and work with, you know, private providers and work with families and, you know, but in terms of authorizing them to make medical decisions, I think that's just a slippery slope that schools, you know, we do a lot, and I don't think we wanna get into the management business.
And just to play devil's advocate, not that I disagree, is the reason for this as a sort of, way to help those who don't necessarily have access to healthcare, is that sort of the idea, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, I mean, this is pure conjecture, but I've, you know, been in statewide organizations where what it looks like out in rural western New York in terms of access to healthcare is an issue. And so I think this tries to get help to where help is needed. What I'd say is the state has a responsibility as part of that. And a lot of districts around here, and especially for mental health, are doing mental health clinics with the Department of Mental Health, you know, from their county. So I think there's a different model to get at what I think what this is trying to get at. I think it's a good cause, is getting medical help for families that can't have access to it. But I think there's a different way to do it, not just drop it on the district's responsibility and the liability and the district's medical director.
Yeah, the NYSSBA packet talks about basically the lack of access to pediatricians in rural New York. And that there's been some success through the BOCES that proposed this. To a degree, I mean, I think it's, as you said, it's a state issue. It seems like it's putting something on the school districts that, you know, maybe it's a Band-Aid, whereas, you know, it could be a state, you know, Department of Health or something other issue that's addressed outside.
It is letting the districts choose whether to have it or not. It's not saying you have to do it, but yes, I still oppose it, but it's not a mandate to do it.
That's true.
It's giving the options to the rural district.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess, so I'm like kind of agnostic, I guess, more, but you know, because it doesn't affect us.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do it.
You guys feel strongly?
I think too much is already being pushed on the schools.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And teachers as, it's not really our place, and then I have questions about funding on it too. There's only so much money in the state too.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go with West Putt, recommendation to oppose that one.
Okay, so just to make sure I have our votes right, 8 we're supporting.
Yep.
And then we're basically opposing everything except for 16 years.
Yeah, so we're following the recommendations other than 11. We're following West Putt's recommendation on 13, so we're gonna oppose 13.
Wait, sorry, 11 is opposed, right?
11 is opposed.
Yeah.
13 is opposed. 14 is opposed. 15 is opposed. 16 agreed. 17 opposed. 18 opposed. And then 22 and 23 opposed.
Got it, okay, yep. All on.
And then the other ones are all resolutions that NYSSBA had recommended opposing. Were there any of those that we wanted to address? Okay. Great. Eric?
Thank you.
Yes,
No
thank
problem.
you.
I hope all of our votes aren't decisive on every issue.
All right. Moving on to the regionalization plan. So Greg and I attended the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES regionalization meeting on, what day is that? Last week? Sometime last week.
Sometimes
Which Greg will talk about, but in general, you know, my impression, having not really dug into this beforehand, was that there are a lot of great opportunities for us as a small district. Nothing that we're really committing to, certainly nothing we're committing funds to right now, but that there's a lot of good work happening to figure out how we can better align and you know, find some good efficiencies with our partner districts in the BOCES. But Greg, you want to talk about sort of where we are currently and what we need to do next?
Sure. So, you know, most of the component districts of Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES have agreed to develop a plan. And so this was a follow-up meeting where we identified areas of common need where we could collaborate as a region and to put in our plan that our local BOCES will be sending to the Commissioner and the State Education Department. And there's really 3 items, and none of these require us to do any sort of financial outlay. It just requires us to be part of this process as we move forward. So I'll talk about them very briefly. You can choose to do one of them, you can choose to do all of them, or you can choose to not be involved in the process. I will tell you that, I'll quickly go over it. There's 4 areas that the region has defined that we all have common need that we think we could develop a plan for. So one is regional mental health services and expanding that. So using the local BOCES to bring in mental health clinics, things of that nature. Mobile crisis unit, we do have one in Putnam. Westchester does not really have one, but even more support for mobile crisis unit. Bringing in more people to do, you know, kind of psychiatric evaluations, things that really support the community and our students and our schools and our families. And so, you know, my recommendation to this board is that we would want to be part of that, right? If we have a family in need and there's more support and services, and you know, part of the plan isn't just what we're going to do. There's also asks to the state, and that is additional funding, ability if we need to pay for a service for one of our kiddos that's an educational responsibility, running those through BOCES so that we can get aid on it, which there are some things that we can't do via COSER, and so that's something that I think would be benefiting. We and what we're committing is, yes, we'll continue to advocate and plan, and once maybe we get some okays from the state, kind of move forward with that. The other one is cooperative pre-K and CPSE services. As you know, the school district is responsible to coordinate and hold CPSE meetings. So we'll just start with CPSE. The county is responsible to actually provide the service, but we have to coordinate. We have to contact providers. We currently contract through Haldane, so we kind of do it a little bit locally in terms of regionalization, but one of the things is there's always a lack of providers in Putnam County. The reimbursement rate in Putnam County, though it's gone up in Westchester, it has not gone up in Putnam County. The reimbursement rate for CIT providers, for OT, PT, a typical, you know, prevailing wage for a licensed clinical speech pathologist is probably anywhere from $100 to $120. And I think that right now the reimbursement rate is like in the 50s for them in Putnam County. So a lot of providers, it's not worth their while to provide CPSE kiddos services, and there's also not for half-day or full-day special class programs. There's just not enough places. So one of the asks is that that maybe through BOCES coordinates all of the CPSE services, gets a higher reimbursement rate, and that they coordinate instead of individual districts having to make the contacts. And the bottom line is, if we can't find a provider for one of our CPSE kiddos, we're left holding the bag financially and legally. And so one of the things is that and we're all competing against each other in Putnam County to get providers. But if the reimbursement rate is raised, BOCES is the central repository, and being able to kind of marshal resources in the region, we think we'll have a better opportunity there. The second part is cooperative pre-K. We have a UPK program. Other districts have UPK programming. Some use their own staff, and as we know, the reimbursement rate currently for us is about $5,400 a student. that cost alone, that reimbursement rate, does not cover our carrying costs or our staff. And we want our staff teaching our kids. The other thing, some districts use vendors, and this would be able to allow, number one, school districts to use BOCES to get a vendor into their UPK program. The other thing is, if you have space in your program, like let's say, like right now, you know, we're not at capacity. Another district may be at capacity. You may be a community member that, look, I've got childcare issues, but I work in Brewster. Brewster has an open space. We could send that family over there, and if we have an open space, some other family can come in this neck of the woods if we have space, and then we would get more reimbursement. We could fill up a class and get more reimbursement. That's just a thought, and BOCES would really try to coordinate all that. And again, just using not anybody outlaying extra money, but a little bit of advocating and a little bit of central coordination so that more kids can have access to UPK, which I think is a good thing for kids. So I think we should join that. The last one is, and I think the biggest one in terms of a cost saver, is centralized transportation, particularly for special education placements, for private and parochial schools. Right now, if we have a kid that has a new special ed placement or special ed placement, we have to arrange transportation for them. If we have a kid that decides next year to go to a private parochial school and they put in their application by the April 1 deadline, or they move into the district, and that's a new run for us. That's extremely expensive. One of the ideas is for BOCES to run a central routing system with a dispatcher and a transportation coordinator, so that all the districts would throw in their runs, their out-of-district runs or parochial runs at the beginning of the school year. And given, you know, all the parameters of where those kids live and what programs they're going to, BOCES would be able to generate routes that could be shared across districts. And then so like if us and Haldane and Putnam Valley and maybe Peekskill and HUD, we could go into contracts together, or through a BOCES contract, we could route kids so that now instead of we have a bus going with one kid on it, maybe we take other kids on it too. That reduces our cost. Or instead of us sending a bus to a private parochial school, we now share that cost with another district who's already going there. But the problem is if you're all routing individual, it's really hard at the beginning of the year to kind of say like, well, how can we make this all work for everybody? So we really think there's a real sort of cost savings. We see it a lot. That we see, you go down 684, you go down 9, you will see a Hen Hud bus, a Peekskill bus, a Carmel bus, maybe a Garrison bus, and they all have one kid on it or two kids on it. And guess what? They're all going to the same location in southern Westchester. So there's a lot of potential there for a lot of districts to save money, and that's one thing that we should jump on as well. And the last one is Regional Internship Clearinghouse, and the reason that I didn't check it is because this is really for vocational education for students, also in terms of E&L learners who are 18 to 22 as well, and giving them GED opportunities. I didn't check it off because we don't really have those students. Yes, we do send them to the high schools, and I know the districts that we send to are all other than Highland Falls, Fort Montgomery, because they're not in the BOCES, but our other two are part of this, so they're all on board with that. I don't know that we need to get involved in that because we don't really have locus of control of it. But I think items, 1.1 through 1.3, I think are worthwhile for us to engage in. We already, I think, made a motion as a board last year that we would be part of the regionalization process. All I need is the board's okay for me to sign off that BOCES can submit the plan and we'll be part of it at least 1.1 through 1.3.
At this point, we're mostly just agreeing to continue in this process, continue being a constructive partner, thinking about how this would work, and then potentially sign on, depending on how the details come together down the road.
Yeah, and just because I think that's a good point, Dan, just because we are part of this process, let's say cooperative, we don't benefit from it, we're not giving something to somebody else, we're just engaged in the process and can take part in these 3 things. If we don't engage in it, we can't take part in some of those things. So there are think 15 districts that are part of it, we have 18. Not everybody signed on to it for whatever reason, but I wanna make sure if we can save a lot of money in transportation, I wanna make sure we're part of it. If we can get additional mental health services for families and community members, I wanna make sure we're part of it. I think these are all good things for kids and also fiscally responsible.
Yep.
I think they're great. Would there be any additional burden on staff to coordinate with the BOCES, or would it add a layer of work?
No,
for anybody?
that's a real good question. It would actually help.
Okay.
So like the transportation one.
Right.
If Joe's got a route, if we get a new kid that moves in tomorrow, and they have a private or parochial or special ed placement, and we're not going there, Joe's gotta call up. Anybody, Haldane, you have somebody, Henhud, you have somebody. He's gotta make all these individual calls, and a lot of times, for whatever reason, their routes are set, and it's more of a hassle for them to figure out how to pick up our kid. This would actually be helpful and take, Joe would just say, I got this kid, they moved in, they're going to this program, send it to BOCES transportation coordinator, and they would figure it out.
Great.
So to me, this helps us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't put any burden on our teachers or any burden, it's just my time and some of the administrators' time as we get into the devil in the details if this plan gets off the ground. And I think that's well worth our time as administrators.
I also just want to add, I think there's a huge benefit to having you out there representing our district in this way. I was on the online portion and saw your presentation, and it was wonderful to have Garrison represented at the table and having our voice heard really small. We do need help, so building these bridges with other districts, reaching out to them, I think is really key to us. So thank you for representing us so well. But I think there's a huge benefit so that they don't forget about us as little entities, but have a voice at the table on these things.
Yeah, if we're able to save 2 transportation, or split the cost for 2 transportation runs with someone else, that's a teacher's worth of pay. So it's worthwhile.
That's great.
Great. Any other comments? So we will certify our continued participation in those.
We'll sign off on it.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Moving on to item 5C, which is the discussion and adoption of the board operational guidelines. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves and adopts the 2025-2026 board operational guidelines as presented. These are, I think, exactly the same as last year, and we are required to adopt them every year. Is that right? It's pretty dry. Anyone have any thoughts, comments?
Motion.
May I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to item 5D. This is a discussion of the 2025-2026 board goals. So I mentioned this earlier, we talked a little bit about this at our board retreat last week. And then we circulated the draft language to the full board for review. We got some comments back, but I think these are probably in pretty close to final form, but we're still open to any suggestions folks have. They in some ways are very similar to last year. There are a couple new board goals. The first goal, objective 1A, is building on last year's goal of advancing professional learning and curriculum development initiatives that foster an educational environment preparing students for success in the 21st century workforce, especially amid rapid technological and environmental change. So we've added to that one this promoting a culture of continuous improvement through regular assessment cycles, leveraging both internal insights and external benchmarks to remain at the forefront of innovative and effective teaching and learning practices. So I think this goal really gets to some of the issues we were talking about earlier, focusing on and building on sort of the work we've already done on the environmental and sustainability front, and also trying to integrate, more of a STEAM focus, building on some of these other practices that we're doing, like the empowered classroom, really, leveraging sort of our resources there and trying to develop a curriculum around innovation, technological change, and these other factors. So, you know, I think this is pretty close to what we talked about in the board goals, or in the board retreat, but, anyone have any comments or any other thoughts on it?
I think good.
Great. So goal 2 is a new goal for the board. This is to explore and evaluate opportunities and challenges related to volunteerism and community service with the aim of strengthening partnerships and fostering civic responsibility among students, staff, and community members. This goal, I think, comes in part from sort of discussions with other parents, with the PTA, with GSAP about the challenges of trying to find volunteers for the various activities we have within the district and within the school building. And, you know, it really just, for this goal, we're being somewhat modest and just focusing on, you know, taking sort of a step back, being reflective, thinking about how we could partner better with some of the other organizations here within the district, GSAP and PTA, and figure out if there's a role for the board to play moving forward in strengthening this effort. Thoughts? Changes? Comments? Okay. And then financial stewardship remains the same, other than just aligning this with our next generation teaching and learning priorities. Do we want to go ahead and adopt these if we are ready? Or do we want to hold off and do that next week?
I would just adopt them and make some comments.
So we have a lot of.
We do have a lot.
Yeah, we should adopt it.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Can we do a quick adoption of it?
Want me to just read it?
Yeah.
On the resolution?
That's
All
great.
right.
Be it resolved.
Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves and adopts the 2025-2026 board goals as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Great. Thanks, Dusty. Moving on to our first public comment session. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. We have no sign-ups today. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak? Be heard? Hearing none, we will close public comment and move on to item 7A, which is acceptance of the minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular workshop meeting of September 3rd, 2025 as presented. May I have a motion?
Second.
Any changes to the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Item 8A, financial reports. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the treasurer's reports for June 2025, July 2025, and August 2025, and further accepts the claims audit report for August 2025 as presented.
So moved.
Second. Any comments on these? Anything we need to discuss?
Well, I can just mention that a lot of these wait until all the final entries are made for the audit, you know, in order to close the books as of June 30th. And that's why you get them all in a big batch.
Great. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to item 9A, Planning Committee report with Jocelyn Absella, Chair.
Thank you. We met last week, no, excuse me, 2 weeks ago after the before the board meeting. And we kind of took a little bit of a look back at the strategic coherence plan that was developed 5 years ago now. And we as a committee decided that, as Greg mentioned earlier in the superintendent's report, we're moving forward with a 5-year environmental education and sustainability plan. The planning committee would like to support that, have members on the task force that will be created, and ensure that the other committees of the board, like finance and maybe policy, but otherwise will also be integrated so that everyone's kind of on the same page with that major thing that we're embarking on. And I know that there are 2 task forces. One will be the outdoor classroom, which Peter's chairing, and then there'll be another one coming up that someone else will volunteer to work on. I don't know.
We love our task force recently.
We have lots of task forces. And then we just talked, we got to have Mike be present at the meeting. It was nice to hang out with him. And he's working a lot on curriculum mapping. Maybe he'll have a couple of maps for us by the end of the school year for some of the subject areas, and we're looking forward to a presentation. That's pretty much it. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it would be good at some point down the road to sync up what's going on with this task force and the outdoor class.
Yeah,
Just make sure they
and I can
speak to
amend
each other.
these, because the minutes that I had implied you were chair of task force, but they're good too, so I don't wanna get any confusion, or maybe unfortunately volunteers for both.
We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jocelyn. Any questions about the planning committee report? All right, moving on to audit committee report with Sarah.
So we had a wonderful audit committee meeting right before this, with our external auditors. Alan came in from PFK O'Connor Davies. We have a new community member, Kate Connor, on the audit committee. I want to thank Kate for her time and interest and excitement. And thank Peter as well for joining us this evening. The audit will be presented in public to the full board on October 8th. We have extra copies of the initial report for anyone to review. If you have questions on it, please send them in. This was a great audit. It was really, the credit goes to Joe, Jen, and the team. I know I get excited every year, but this
You
was,
say it's a great audit.
it's, like, they had like 3 little things, and 2 of those issues that they brought up are really due to, in my reading of it, Joe, and you can correct me, are due to our size. Like, yes, we could add more checks and balances, other school districts have them. We don't have that many more people to put in these positions. So, I think we worked really hard by adding the treasurer's position to have more checks and balances. It's the first year I didn't see the school lunch fund on their list, which is just ironic, seeing as we now actually have school lunch. And then we are over our fund balance. Again, we are looking at 21%, which is above the 4% the state wants us to have. We did a thorough review, I would say, of where the different things are in designated fund balance, and we really worked with our plan, thank you Joe for that, and the finance committee to max out how much we're putting in from the undesignated into designated funds. So this does support what we've been doing, which is sort of taking from undesignated and rolling it into the next year's budget. So we will, that's the other thing they looked at, but we can have more questions. The full reports are available, all the exciting numbers and everything. I'm sure Joe can answer any questions.
We'll send the draft report out electronically, so you all have it and can ask any questions before the next meeting. We'll get them answered.
So on the, just a quick question.
Yeah.
So on the transfers from undesignated to designated, are they recommending that, you said we've maxed out what we can do?
So we created a plan, right? The finance committee set the plan for how much, some of it is set by law in the state, and this is where audit gets really exciting. So, and some of it is what we as a finance committee decide. And I think we've done a really good job in this district of, both following the law and looking for opportunities to make sure that as we had a rainy day, years ago, and we needed to dip into those balances, we had what we needed. So we've refilled tax certs. We've refilled the ERS, the TRS, up to the levels we're comfortable with. I think it's 3 years for TRS right now. So the rest of it does sort of fall then into undesignated. We have not put any money into funds where they need to be voted out, which is something the finance committee could look at, but it does put a lot of restrictions on how we use that.
That's capital.
Yeah, capital, like for capital projects. The thing you always talk about, like not being a finance person, but it's pretty easy to look at those numbers and say 4% of our annual budget is not a lot. And when we have that undesignated fund balance available, should we have a real true emergency, like, you know, the roof falls in, we have the money there to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, 4% for us compared to most districts is such a tiny number.
It's very small.
That, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to get from 21 to 4%. It takes one big couple of kids moving in who need a lot of services or things like that. So I think we have to kind of take that under advisement, and we're doing our best, but we also have to be careful that we don't put ourselves in a position where we don't have any flexibility if something should come up.
And we do have a lot of, you know, contingency built in and fluctuation because of, by nature of our size. I think Joe and his team do a really good job of budgeting for, you know, we need special education placements. We talked about this in the committee meeting. We have to have extra ones in case somebody moves in. We have to support that. So there is funding, but if we don't use it, it rolls over into undesignated. Some of our tuition bills from the high schools, which we can't predict ahead of time because the state won't release any numbers for tuition ahead of time, are lower than anticipated, than contractually obligated. So I think that's where you're really seeing the numbers. I think Joe does a really good job and is a little conservative on, I think there was an increase in how much interest we received, but we didn't know how much the rates would fluctuate throughout the year. That's really hard to predict.
Yeah, so we increased it from the prior year budget of 80,000 or whatever to 200, but we still earned 350,000 on interest. So that's a good thing. And then we did have some. We do budget for special education placements. We didn't have to use them all. This year we're currently we're using all of our contingent placements. So you never really know until the school year starts, and you could even have somebody move in during the middle of the year. In prior years, we had students move out during the middle of the year that were high cost and made a big variance that way. So that happens.
The thing I liked about this report is that you can really explain and see the story of the year in the numbers. It's very clear as to sort of why things happen, which I think is really good for us as a district. It shows that we're really paying attention. We know where the money's coming in from, where it's going out, things like that. So, and the extra classroom fund one was really interesting to read as well. So.
Great. Well, good news. Another good year of financial reports. So thank you to Joe, absolutely, for all that hard work.
And Genevieve gets a lot of credit for this.
Yeah, she keeps things moving smoothly.
Yes. Great. Any other comments or questions on audit?
Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 10, CSE and CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education and the Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to the personnel items, item 11A. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Greg?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I just want to welcome, as you heard in my last presentation, we did have a teacher aide that did resign. I'm happy to report, due to Allison Emmig's quick action, we did search and scour for a replacement, and we want to welcome Jacob Ferriola, who is actually a certified teacher. And actually has experience in special ed placements too. So Jacob will be joining us. We're really excited. I got to meet him. He's really excited to be here. You know, Usually you don't get a teacher aide who is a certified educator, and this is a certified educator, so we're really lucky to have Jacob join us. The other thing I will mention, we also lost, as you know, some per diem subs, and we always need them. Again, the numbers are so small, a couple people are out, and all of a sudden we have staffing issues. Again, Allison worked really, really hard and got us, they may be uncertificated subs, but I will tell you they're all in master's program that lead to certification. So they're all in education programs. So Chloe and Victoria will be joining us as per diem subs, non-certificated, but they have educational background. One of them is a certified not, or certificated early childhood person, so has experience in that, so we're really excited about that. And lastly, we're appointing Pat Beckley as you heard from the modified program. We have 3 students that are going to play boys soccer. We've not had these discussions last year. Mr. Beckley not agreed to take on a coaching position because there are 30 kids in that team. We kind of need 2 coaches for it. We're really excited that those 3 kids, unlike last year, those 3 boys get to play soccer as in the modified program. So we want to thank Pat for giving of his time and coaching, helping coach the boys soccer. Thank you.
Super. Thank you. Any questions or comments on personnel items? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to item 12, new business. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the new business items as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So we have 3 items here. Joe, do you want to give a quick update on?
Yeah, I can do all 3 of these. So the first one represents the contract for the services that were actually provided by BOCES. So that's amendment to reflect what was actually purchased, and then that is something that has to be signed off and given back to the BOCES because they have to report that out to the state. And then there is the approval of the award of the bid for the water heater. So we did bid that out again, and the bids were open last Wednesday. And then we had I met with the apparent low bidder and the architect to do a scope review, and based upon that scope review and the architect's recommendation, we're recommending that we award the bid to RJH Mechanical Solutions, and that we also had in that bid an alternate to remove the oil plumbing that goes from the one boiler room to the other through the crawl space. And that still fits in the budget, so we're recommending to award the alternate as well. And then the last item there is there's 2 contracts with the architect. This is work that has already been agreed upon by the board to do, but these are now the official contracts for that work. So the 2025, 2026 budgeted items that were capital projects, that's the first contract. And the second one is for the architect to run the outdoor classroom task force. So those are the 2 contracts that are there. So the board already, once the public adopted the budget, the board already accepted these proposals, and these are the official contracts to go along with that.
Great. Questions? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving on to our second public comment. I will move right through this one and move on to 14A, which is board comments. Jocelyn. Eric. Nothing from me. Pete. Kent.
No, nothing.
Sarah.
Just a quick thing, Scott Levy, who serves on the West Tech board, he's also a board member in Byram Hills. He wrote a book that just released called Why School Boards Matter. Greg and I got to see him speak last year at the West Tech dinner, and it's not like a really political book, it's more about the history of school boards and what they do and why they're so important. I meant to bring my copy, because it just arrived, I haven't read it yet, but I would highly recommend everyone just at least take a look at it and see if you're interested. It's really interesting. One of the things he's mentioned at that dinner that I found, that I really took away from it, was when he was pitching it to publishers, a lot of them wanted him to like have a political stance on school boards and take a stand, and he refused to do that and went with a publisher who was maybe smaller but allowed him to really write from an open perspective about school boards. So, in this sort of politically charged climate, I think that's a really interesting take on it. And I'm excited to read it, and just wanted to throw it out there and recommend it.
Thank you. Okay, we do have executive session tonight, so, let's see, I'll read the resolution here. Resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of reviewing the building-wide safety plan. May I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?